In this video, we're looking at the chilling case of Gene Therno, a man who didn't realize that someone close to him was slowly developing a dangerous obsession. What began as a simple friendship would twist into fixation, control, and ultimately a terrifying outcome. This is a story of how quiet obsession can grow in the shadows until it finally reveals itself. People in small towns in the United States like to think they can spot danger. There are clear signs, red flags, and warning signs that tell us to stay away from those risks. What does it mean when danger hides as a friend, though? When the person you trust, the coworker you work with, has a dark passion that will destroy everything you've worked for. Before we dive into the full story, take a moment to support the channel by hitting the like button and subscribing if you enjoy true crime content told with care and detail. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you'll be notified the moment a new case is uploaded. There's always more to uncover, and I want you here for every chapter. And I'd really love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your country or city in the comments. It's always amazing to see how stories like this reach people from all around the world and how we're all connected through curiosity, awareness, and the desire to understand the human mind. All right, let's get started. The 2nd of July, 1959 saw the birth of Gene Therno in Kansas City, Missouri. In his mid-40s, he had become the kind of man that everyone wanted to know. Charming, easy to talk to, and the kind of person who could walk into a room and make everyone feel at ease with just a warm smile and real interest in them. Gene was attractive, not in a flashy way, but in the quiet confidence of someone who knew what they were here to do with their life. He had served his country in the Air Force and then became an air traffic controller, which is one of the hardest jobs you can imagine. It wasn't just a job. It was a calling that needed steel nerves, laser-like focus, and the ability to make split-second choices that could save hundreds of lives. Gene was very good at it. His co-workers looked up to him. His bosses believed in him, and everyone who worked with him liked him. He was one of a kind because he made people feel important, heard, and seen. Gene loved dogs very much outside of work. He had 3 dachshunds that he loved and cared for like family. His friends said that he had a big heart and was always positive, looking for the best in people and events. People with strong hearts can still break, though. When Gene's wife got very sick, their 20-year marriage was put to the test. Gene took full responsibility for her care for months or even years. Every doctor's visit, every rough night, and every moment of fear and doubt, he was there. This was the personification of Jean's loyalty. Love shown through actions, not just words. Then, when she was finally better, after the crisis was over and things should have gone back to normal, she hit her hard. She was going to be with someone else instead of him. Think about that deception. He had given up a lot and spent a lot of time and energy helping her get better, but she still left. Jean was very sad. He was no longer married to the woman who had been his life for 20 years. Not because of sorrow or distance, but because she chose to end it. Gene did what many people do when they can't take the pain any longer. He threw himself into his job at the Nebraska control tower, where the hard rhythm of his job helped him forget about his sadness. But he couldn't help but think of her everywhere he went, the house they shared, the places they went, and even the co-workers who knew them when they were together. Jean made a choice in 2002, in a place where so many terrible memories were stored, he couldn't get better. His parents and brothers lived in Florida, so he asked to be moved there. He needed a new start and a chance to build his life up somewhere else. Gene worked with someone named Robert Dean Peterson at the Nebraska Control Center. He was known as Bob by everyone. Gene was friendly and open, but Bob was the exact opposite. He was quiet, shy, and hard to see. No one didn't like him. No one knew who he was. Bob didn't talk much about himself and didn't participate in the casual chats that help people become friends at work. But Gene had seen Bob more than he had seen Gene. He felt drawn to him in a way that wasn't just business respect or casual friendship. Bob was very interested in Gene. He looked at his habits, decisions, and way of life and slowly but surely started to act like him. Gene told Bob that he loved dachshunds, so Bob bought one too. When Gene drove a certain car, Bob bought the exact same model in the same color. It began small. There are echoes of Gene's life in Bob's. Their co-workers thought it was safe, maybe a little strange, but nothing to worry about. Gene was nice to Bob because Gene is nice like that. He was nice and friendly, and he never made Bob feel left out or weird. Even more, Gene seemed to be one of the few people Bob really liked being with. When Bob was with Gene, he came to life. He got excited and almost dizzy. His whole attitude changed. Gene had Bob's full attention, and it was clear that he was more than just impressed by him. Bob looked at Gene with full attention at all times, no matter what he did or decided. But respect had turned into something else, something darker. A quiet obsession that grew under the surface of niceties at work. Still, no one thought Bob was dangerous. Maybe odd, definitely lonely, but not dangerous. Anyone who knew Bob thought he was a nice person who was shy. Bob's response was very different from those of his co-workers when Gene told them he was moving to Florida. Everyone else agreed with Gene's choice to start over, but Bob seemed really upset. Gene might have been the only person at work who was close to Bob and made his days tolerable. Gene was now going. Gene moved on to a new life at St. Petersburg Clearwater International Airport in 2003 when he arrived in Tampa Bay. The Sunshine State was happy to have him. Because he was so friendly, he became a quick favorite among his new co-workers. Gene felt like himself again for the first time since his breakup. Making the choice to move was the right one. Then he met her. Her name was Juanita J.J. Formoso, but everyone just called her J.J. or J.J. She was also a single mother who worked as an air traffic controller and was well known in her job. Like Gene, she had just come out of a marriage that had lasted 20 years. They knew each other's pain because they had both had to start over. Gene didn't rush things because he was a gentleman. Their friendship grew slowly and carefully based on real connection rather than loneliness or desperation. But they had something special between them from the start that they should have kept safe and grown. They kept their relationship a secret at work for 2 years, not out of shame, but because they wanted to keep something important from their work lives. But as their love grew, Gene knew he had found what he was looking for. He didn't just see JJ as a friend or a way to forget about his ex-wife. She was his future. JJ was thrilled when Gene asked her to marry him. After a lot of pain and heartache, fate finally brought them together. They chose to build a new house in Lando Lakes, which is a safe, quiet, and beautiful neighborhood. It was the right place for them to start over. Their wedding was small, and only close family and friends were there. This was the first time in years that both Gene and JJ truly and fully felt happy. But they couldn't have known that their happiness was short-lived, and that the danger to their future was already happening and getting closer every day. 3 months after Gene moved to Florida, Robert Dean Peterson did something unexpected. He moved to Florida too, and he went to work at the same place Gann did, the St. Petersburg Clearwater Control Tower. The simple reason Bob gave was that he too wanted a new start, and the center had openings. It would be silly not to take the chance. Gene wasn't sure what to think about it. It seemed like a strange accident, but Bob was a good worker who was quiet and professional. It could have been a chance after all. Gene and JJ both chose to sell their homes as they got ready to move into their dream home. Bob then made a strange offer. He wanted to buy Gene's house. Before Bob made his strange request, Gene thought it was a little strange, but there was nothing really wrong with it. Bob wanted to buy the house along with Gene's sheets and pillows. Gene thought Bob was kidding, a person who wants to buy someone's used bedding. Gene did not leave his bed sheets behind even though the deal went through. Bob's sadness was clear and made me feel uneasy. Gene and JJ's new house was finally ready in 2006. They were so happy and excited to start this new part of their lives together. But Bob wouldn't stop pressing on going to see them at their new home. Despite saying he had a special present for them to mark their start, he was unable to bring it to work. This made the couple feel bad. Bob wasn't asked to come to their wedding. They didn't think he would bring them a gift. They had been clear about their professional limits, but Bob wouldn't give up. When Bob finally showed up, he had a pricey crystal vase with him. A lot of money was spent, which made Gene and JJ feel bad, especially since Bob wasn't at their wedding. Because they felt bad, they did something they would later regret. Bob was asked to stay for dinner. Bob was, of course, thrilled. This was exactly what he had hoped for when he brought such a costly present. On November 1st, 2006, Theo family in Pasco County was supposed to have a normal evening with a quiet dinner. However, the mood was off as soon as Bob walked in. Even though he was happy and chatty, Gene and JJ couldn't help but look directly at him with discomfort. Bob got there early and didn't seem to be planning to leave. He ate a lot of each course and settled down like he was going to stay the whole night. Then he gave them another gift, a big picture album bound in leather. Jen and JJ were confused at first, but as they turned the pages, they became horrified. Inside were high-quality photos taken by professionals that showed how their house was built from start to finish. Page after page showed how the house went from an empty lot to a finished one. There were pictures of their drapes, how they set up their furniture, and other private features of their home. "You've been coming to our house all this time?" JJ asked in a shaking voice. "Every couple of days," Bob replied with pride in his voice. "I photographed everyone's houses from work." The announcement was shocking. Bob had been spying on them and taking pictures of their house without their permission, violating their privacy in the name of art. Gene and JJ looked at each other in secret, both of them feeling stuck. Bob didn't seem like he was going to leave. They were saved when JJ's adult daughter showed up. That evening, they had a meeting. JJ told Bob she had to leave and hoped he would get the message and leave. He didn't. JJ looked at her husband, feeling confused and uneasy. She hoped that by the time she got back, their unpleasant guest would be gone. She had no idea that this was the last time she would see Gene living. Bob told Gene he had one more gift to give him, but it was in his car. JJ had already left with her daughter. He came back with a letter. When Gene read Bob's letter, "I have loved you for some time now." He must have been shocked into silence. "But I've always been too scared to tell you," she said. "This wasn't the love of friendship. There was something else going on here, something obsessed and very scary." Bob told Gene that he wasn't sure if he was gay or straight, but he knew he loved Gene. The letter then became dangerous. Bob told her he wouldn't leave the house until they had a private moment. "I just can't do it anymore." Bob wrote, "I feel like I've been living a lie all these years. I've already asked for God's forgiveness." That last line should have been the biggest red flag. Bob had already asked for pardon. Why? Because of what he was going to do. Bob's car wasn't there when JJ got home. The first feeling of ease didn't last long. After that, she saw the bloody path in the yard. Then her husband's clothes were all over the floor, bloody. Then the note on the end table that was written to Gene. Gene and Bob were not to be found anywhere. JJ called her husband, but his phone was at home. There was no question that something terrible had happened because of how much blood there was. Something on the floor of the living room caught her eye as she walked through it. At that very moment, the horrible truth became clear. Someone had fired a gun in her house. Bob took her husband after he was shot. JJ called 911 with her hands shaking. Within minutes, officers from the Pasco County Sheriff's Office were on their way to the scene. A huge search started right away for both guys, the victim and the dangerous suspect. For JJ, the wait was long and painful, and he held on to the dream that Gene was still alive in some way that was impossible. Police rushed to Bob Peterson's home in Lutz, but it was dark and empty when they got there. Gene wasn't to be found. During their investigation, police found something very important: a contract to rent a house in Safety Harbor, Florida. Bob had planned this ahead of time. Deputies were sent to the Safety Harbor home 2 days after Gene went missing. They found something very disturbing inside. Robert Dean Peterson was lying on the bed in the master bedroom in just his pants and a t-shirt. He had killed himself. Galen Eugene Gene Therno was also shot and lying next to him on the ground. The shot stopped the fighting, but it wasn't over yet. The fact that Gene's body had been cut up showed how deeply obsessed Bob was, which was terrifying. Robert Dean Peterson had followed Gene across state lines, gotten involved in Gene's new life, and invaded Gene's privacy. When Gene turned him down, which he knew would happen, he did something horrible. Then he killed himself because he couldn't face the effects of what he had done. Everyone who knew Gene Therno was deeply saddened by his death. But JJ was especially affected. She had finally found happiness and had built a home and a future with the man she loved. Now she had to understand how one act of intense violence had destroyed everything. When JJ talked to the police, she told them about Bob's strange behavior around Gene, but she claimed she didn't know how bad his obsession was. How could she have known? Bob had seemed harmless. Just another coworker. Maybe a little strange, but never dangerous. When the police found out that Bob had asked Gene to go on a date that night, JJ was sure that her husband had turned him down firmly. Gene would never have felt the same way about Bob. Following this terrible event, JJ showed a great deal of kindness. "I don't hate Bob," she said afterward. "How can you hate someone who is mentally ill?" he asked on Investigation Discovery. She thought about the good things that had happened in her life and said that she was thankful to have known Gene and known what it was like to be truly loved. It's been very hard to deal with such a tragedy. But JJ says that her faith in God has helped her stay strong. She wants to keep her current life quiet, but it looks like she has found some peace and moved on, taking Jean's memory with her. This case brings up scary questions about addiction, the warning signs we miss or ignore, and the danger of someone who doesn't see another person as a person with free will and agency but as something they want to possess. The impersonation, the request for personal things, the unwanted surveillance, and the stalking across state lines were all signs that Robert Dean Peterson was acting in a dangerous way. All of the acts, though, could be explained away on their own as strange, socially awkward, or harmless. We can only see the pattern of passion leading to violence when we look back and see the whole picture. The person who died was 47 years old. He had been through the pain of divorce, put his life back together, found love again, and was almost there with the happiness he earned. He was killed by someone he had always been nice to and tried to become friends with when other people avoided them. Gene Therno, please rest in peace. Though you died too soon, your life touched the hearts of everyone who knew you. You made your family and friends happy, loved, and laughed. And they will always remember you. People will always remember the happiness and love you gave them. Thank you for spending your time with this story today. As you move forward, protect your peace and trust your instincts. Pay attention to the behavior of those around you, to the patterns, the intentions, and the ways people show love or control. Distance isn't disrespect. Boundaries aren't cold. They are necessary. Your well-being deserves to be defended, even when it requires hard choices. Take care of yourself. Know your worth. And remember that awareness is one of the strongest forms of protection we have. If you found this story insightful, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss future cases. And I'd love to hear from you. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware.